from the judge who was gunned down right outside his courthouse.
This was just cold-blooded, attempted murder on a judge.
To the one who was attacked in front of a stunned courtroom audience. Today, we're diving deep into 8 shocking cases where judges found themselves under attack, from ambushes outside courthouses to violent confrontations inside their own courtrooms. Judge Joseph J. Bruzzese, Jr. Let's start with one of the most brazen and calculated attacks on a judge in recent American history. An attack that happened not in the dead of night, but in broad daylight, right outside a courthouse in Steubenville, Ohio. On the morning of August 21, 2017, Judge Joseph J. Bruzzese, Jr. was walking from his reserved parking spot toward the side entrance of the Jefferson County Courthouse when his world exploded into violence.
This was just cold-blooded, attempted murder on a judge.
The attack occurred shortly after 8 a.m. as Judge Bruzzese made his way through a narrow alley known as Dollar Alley, a route he took almost every single day. Surveillance footage would later show that the assailant, Nathaniel Nate Richmond, had been sitting in his car for approximately 45 minutes, patiently monitoring the judge's movements, waiting for him to be alone and vulnerable. When Judge Bruzzese finally appeared, Richmond exited his vehicle, crossed the street with deadly intent, and without warning opened fire on the unsuspecting judge. The sound of gunshots shattered the early morning calm of downtown Steubenville. Richmond fired multiple shots at close range, striking Judge Bruzzese and causing him to collapse to the ground. For most people, being shot would mean the end: panic, shock, the overwhelming urge to simply survive. But Judge Bruzzese was not most people. He was an avid hunter, someone who had carried a firearm for years and knew how to use it under pressure. Even as he lay wounded on the pavement, bleeding and in excruciating pain, Judge Bruzzese managed to retrieve his dropped handgun and return fire, squeezing off approximately 5 shots toward his attacker. At that exact moment, a probation officer who was arriving for work witnessed the chaos unfolding before him. This officer, whose quick thinking and bravery would later be credited with saving the judge's life, drew his own weapon, ordered Richmond to drop his gun, and when the attacker refused to comply, the probation officer fired, striking Richmond and bringing the deadly confrontation to an end. Richmond, realizing he was outgunned and mortally wounded, attempted to flee by backing his car into another vehicle, but he collapsed at the scene and died shortly thereafter. The entire ordeal lasted only seconds, but those seconds felt like an eternity for everyone involved.
It's a sad day in America where we have another judge shot in front of his courthouse.
Judge Bruzzese was airlifted to UPMC Hospital in Pittsburgh, where he underwent surgery for his injuries. Remarkably, despite being shot multiple times in what authorities described as a cowardly ambush and cold-blooded attempted murder, the judge survived. But the big question remained: why? Why would someone target Judge Bruzzese in such a violent and calculated manner? The attacker, Nathaniel Richmond, was the father of Malik Richmond, one of the 2 Steubenville High School football players convicted in the infamous 2012 rape case that made national headlines.
And it is the court's decision that both of the defendants are hereby adjudicated delinquent beyond a reasonable doubt on all 3 counts as charged.
Many initially speculated that the attack was motivated by revenge related to that case. However, investigators quickly determined that Judge Bruzzese had not presided over the rape trial, and there was no direct connection between the judge and Malik Richmond's conviction. So if it wasn't about the rape case, what was it? The investigation revealed a much more complicated and tragic motive. In April 2017, just months before the attack, Nathaniel Richmond had filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Jefferson Metropolitan Housing Authority. The lawsuit alleged negligence, exposed wires, inoperable smoke alarms that led to a devastating 2015 house fire that killed Richmond's mother and great-nephew. The truth is, we'll never know exactly what was going through Richmond's mind in those final moments because he died at the scene, taking his motives to the grave.
There are a number of cases involving Mr. Richmond throughout the past number of years. In this judge's courtroom and in other judges' courtroom. Whether or not there's a connection between any of those prior appearances in that courtroom and today's action, we don't know the answer to that yet.
As of May 2025, Judge Bruzzese remains active on the bench, continuing to handle cases with the same fairness and efficiency that earned him the respect of his colleagues and community long before that fateful morning in August 2017. Judge Mary Kay Courthouse. If you thought the ambush on Judge Bruzzese was shocking, then what happened to Judge Mary Kay Holthus on January 3rd, 2024 in a Las Vegas courtroom will leave you absolutely stunned. Judge Holthus, a 64-year-old veteran of the Clark County judicial system with 27 years of experience as a prosecutor before being elected to the bench in 2018, was presiding over what should have been a routine sentencing hearing for a defendant named Deobra Delone Redden. Redden, who was 31 years old at the time, had a lengthy criminal history, 3 prior felony convictions, and 9 misdemeanors, most of them violent in nature. He was appearing before Judge Holthus to be sentenced for attempted battery with substantial bodily harm, and his defense attorney was pleading with the judge to grant him probation, citing his client's job, mental health treatment, and improved state of mind. Redden himself even spoke up saying, "I'm in a better place in my mind," as if trying to convince the judge that he deserved leniency. But Judge Holthus,
basically, I would like to tell the courts, everyone here, like, based on my criminal history, like, I feel that, like, I shouldn't be, like, sent to prison for a second time.
who had reviewed Redden's extensive record of violence, wasn't convinced. She looked at the evidence, considered the arguments, and then delivered her decision. "I think it's time he get a taste of something else," she said, denying probation and preparing to sentence him to prison time.
But I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else, because I just can't with that history. In accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court...
For most defendants, that would be the end of it. Disappointment, resignation, perhaps some angry words. But Deobra Redden had other plans. In a moment that would be replayed millions of times on social media and news broadcasts around the globe, Redden suddenly cursed, vaulted over the defense table, and launched himself at the judge like a man possessed. The video footage shows Redden flying over the bench, landing on top of Judge Holthus, and knocking her from her chair. He then began punching her repeatedly, slamming her head against the wall, pulling her hair, and screaming obscenities. Judge Holthus later testified that she curled into a fetal position, fearing for her life, thinking that she might not survive the assault. Court officials, including a marshal and a law clerk, rushed to intervene, but Redden was in a frenzy, fighting back against anyone who tried to stop him. It took 4 to 6 people to finally subdue him, and even then, he continued to struggle and resist. So what drove Redden to commit such a shocking act? Diagnosed with schizophrenia at the age of 16, Redden had reported hearing voices since 2012 and had struggled with mental health issues throughout his life. At the time of the attack, he was off his medication, which led to delusions and a complete disconnect from reality. Later, when asked about the incident, Redden expressed remorse, saying, "I'm not an evil person. I know that I did not intend to kill Mary Kay Holthus, though he had prior felony convictions and 9 misdemeanors, violent in nature." He was appearing before Judge Holthus to be sentenced for attempted battery with substantial bodily harm, and his defense attorney was on December 10, 2024. He was sentenced to 26 to 65 years in prison by Judge Susan Johnson, who called the attack an assault on the judiciary itself. Judge Kevin Mullins. Now let's talk about a case that's even more disturbing because of who pulled the trigger. On September 19th, 2024, Letcher County District Judge Kevin Mullins was shot and killed inside his private chambers at the Letcher County Courthouse in Whitesburg, Kentucky. But this wasn't an attack by a disgruntled defendant or a criminal seeking revenge. This was a murder committed by Sheriff Sean "Mickey" Steins, the very person who was supposed to be protecting the judge and upholding the law. The shooting occurred around 2:52 p.m. EDT, and it was all captured on surveillance video inside the judge's chambers. The footage, which was later shown in court, reveals a chilling sequence of events. Sheriff Steins entered the chambers, cleared the room of other people, and then engaged Judge Mullins in what appeared to be a calm 7-minute conversation. But then something changed. Steins pulled out his phone and tried to call his daughter, but the call went unanswered. He then picked up Judge Mullins' phone and tried calling his daughter again, and again, no answer. At that point, according to the video, Steins stood up, locked the door, and without warning, pulled out his firearm and fired 8 to 9 shots at point-blank range, killing Judge Mullins almost instantly. Sheriff Steins immediately surrendered to authorities authorities, expressing concern for his family's safety, but offering no clear explanation for why he had just committed such a heinous act. The two men had been friends, colleagues even, having lunch together earlier that same day. So what could have driven Steins to murder someone he knew so well, someone he had worked alongside for years? The investigation that followed has revealed a tangled and disturbing set of circumstances that paint a very different picture of both men. In the days leading up to the shooting, Sheriff Steins had been exhibiting signs of paranoia and mental distress. He reportedly wasn't sleeping, was convinced that his family was in danger, and had been making alarming statements to those around him. Just 3 days before the murder, Steins had been deposed in a 2022. On December 10, 2024, he was sentenced to 26 to 65 years in prison by Judge Susan Johnson, who called the attack an assault on the judiciary itself. Judge kept to stop it. Fields was later convicted of rape, but the lawsuit also named Steins for negligent supervision, and the deposition had clearly rattled him. But the story gets even more disturbing. After Judge Mullins' death, allegations began to surface that he had been involved in a sex for favors scheme, coercing female inmates into sexual acts in exchange for reduced sentences or other benefits. Victims like Taya Adams came forward, alleging that Mullins had groomed her from the age of 16, and that wild sex parties involving drugs and multiple participants had taken place in the courthouse. Sheriff Steins has pleaded not guilty to murder, and his defense team is pursuing an insanity plea, arguing that he was in a state of extreme emotional disturbance and psychosis at the time of the shooting. As of October 2025, no trial date has been set, and Steins remains in jail without bond, awaiting his day in court. Judge Aubrey Rimes. Not all attacks on judges involve deadly weapons or result in fatalities, but that doesn't make them any less terrifying or significant. On January 7th, 2021, Judge Aubrey Rimes of Pike County Justice Court in Mississippi was presiding over what should have been a routine domestic violence hearing when things took a sudden and violent turn. The defendant, a 27-year-old man named Sidney Newsome, became enraged after Judge Rimes issued a ruling. And what happened next was captured on courtroom surveillance video that has since been viewed millions of times online. Newsome, who was appearing in court on a domestic violence charge, was clearly unhappy with how the hearing was going. He began arguing with the bailiff who was escorting him out of the courtroom, his frustration building with every passing second. Then, in a moment of explosive rage, Newsome broke free from the bailiff's grip, grabbed a stack of papers from the clerk's desk, and hurled them directly at Judge Rimes, who was still seated at the bench. But he wasn't done yet. Newsome then seized a telephone and threw that at the judge as well, sending papers and office supplies flying across the courtroom in a chaotic scene that looked more like something out of a movie than real life. Judge Rimes, to his immense credit, didn't just sit there and wait for help to arrive. Stop it. Fields was later convicted of rape, but the suit also named Steins for negligent supervision, and the deposition had clearly rattled him. But the story gets even. In the courtroom audience rushed over to help restrain him, and within moments, additional deputies arrived to handcuff the defendant and bring the situation under control. The entire ordeal lasted less than a minute, but it was a stark reminder of how quickly a seemingly routine court hearing can descend into violence. The good news is that no one was seriously injured in the attack. Judge Rimes was unharmed, and while the courtroom was left in disarray, the incident was contained without any lasting damage. Newsome was immediately charged with contempt of court and held without bond, and there were initial indications that he would face additional charges of simple assault. However, prosecutor David Brewer later decided not to pursue the assault charges, citing reasons that were not detailed in public records. The case appears to have been resolved locally, and as of 2025, no further updates on Newsome's status or additional convictions have been reported, suggesting that the matter was handled without major legal escalation. Judge Marilyn Cassidy. On August 23, 2011, in Cleveland Municipal Court, Judge Marilyn Cassidy was presiding over routine misdemeanor cases when she encountered a defendant who absolutely refused to follow the rules. The defendant, a 24-year-old man named June Carson, was appearing before the judge on a minor criminal trespassing charge, nothing particularly serious or complicated. But when Judge Cassidy informed Carson that he would need to obtain an attorney to proceed with his case, something inside him snapped.
Are you represented, sir, by an attorney? Sorry. No. You have the right to an attorney to carry a possible jail sentence of up to 30 days, September 20th at 9, continued at defendant's request for pretrial time today.
Carson, mumbling his disagreement with the judge's requirement, suddenly grabbed his backpack and hurled it directly at Judge Cassidy with all the force he could muster.
I don't think I'm going to do it. Continue date. See you on the 20th. Sir, that's fine.
The judge, who had decades of experience dealing with volatile defendants from her 17 years as an assistant Cuyahoga County prosecutor, reacted with lightning speed. She immediately dove for cover behind the bench, activating her emergency buzzer to summon help. But Carson wasn't finished. In a move that shocked everyone in the courtroom, he then turned and punched a nearby public defender who wasn't even involved in his case, striking the attorney completely out of the blue. The response was swift and decisive. Bailiffs and police officers who were present in the court rushed over to help restrain him, and within minutes, additional deputies arrived to help the defendant and bring the situation under. The backpack had missed. The punched public defender was shaken but okay, and Judge Cassidy was unharmed, though understandably rattled by the sudden assault. Carson was immediately held in contempt of court and sentenced to 30 days in the workhouse. Additional felony charges for assault were pursued by Cleveland Police Internal Affairs, and his original trespassing hearing was rescheduled for August 31st, 2011. However, detailed outcomes for those additional charges remain scarce in public records, likely due to the case's age and the relatively minor nature of the original offense. Judge Jennifer Upchurch Edwards. Family court is often described as one of the most emotionally charged environments in the entire judicial system. Divorces, child custody battles, domestic violence cases, these are matters that strike at the very heart of people's lives, and emotions can run incredibly high. On July 13, 2011, Wayne County Family Court Judge Jennifer Upchurch Edwards was presiding over a domestic violence hearing in Monticello, Kentucky, when she experienced firsthand just how dangerous those emotions can become. The defendant in the case, a 30-year-old woman named Melissa Hardwick, became increasingly disruptive during the hearing, repeatedly interrupting her estranged husband's testimony, arguing with the judge, and using profanities in open court.
My personal life is
No.
your business.
Miss Hardwick,
No.
you will be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
Judge Edwards, trying to maintain order and decorum, made the decision to hold Hardwick in contempt and sentence her to 10 days in jail for her behavior.
I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to
Okay.
him.
She will be arrested for contempt
It
of
doesn't
court.
make any difference.
You will serve 10 days for contempt of court.
That's when everything exploded. The moment Judge Edwards announced the 10-day sentence, Hardwick charged toward the bench like a woman possessed, leapt over the courtroom rail, and attempted to choke the judge while yelling threats. It was a terrifying moment, caught on surveillance video that has since been widely shared online.
Get off of me!
Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Judge Edwards, reacting quickly, pushed her chair backward to evade Hardwick's grasp, but the enraged woman was relentless. It took 2 to 3 court officers, including Officer Adam Dodson, to physically restrain Hardwick, pinning her to the floor with their body weight and finally getting her into handcuffs as she continued to struggle and resist.
Wait and see. You. You'll be sad when it happens, Jennifer.
Miraculously, the backpack had missed. The punched punter was shaken but okay, and Judge Cassidy, though understandably rattled by assault. Carson was immediately held in contempt of court and was reassigned to another judge to avoid any appearance of bias or conflict of interest. Hardwick's contempt sentence was extended from 10 days to 120 days, and she faced additional felony charges, including third-degree terroristic threatening, intimidating a participant in the legal process, and resisting arrest. A $25,000 bond was set, and Hardwick remained in custody while the legal proceedings moved forward. Judge Vanessa Dixon. Not all attacks on judges involve physical violence in the traditional sense, but that doesn't make them any less degrading or disturbing. On August 5, 2009, Bourbon County District Judge Vanessa Dixon was presiding over a hearing in Paris, Kentucky, when she became the target of one of the most disrespectful acts imaginable, being spat on by a defendant right in the middle of her own courtroom. The defendant, a 30-year-old man named Bass Webb, was appearing before the judge on extremely serious charges, including attempted murder for allegedly allegedly trying to run over 2 jail employees, and he had also confessed to murdering his girlfriend. But when Judge Dixon explained that she was recusing herself from the case because she personally knew the 2 jail employees Webb was accused of trying to kill, Webb reacted in the most vile way possible.
Can you order saying?
Yeah.
That be yes?
Yes.
There's no way I'm going to try this case or have any further proceedings, or I have to see you for one further second.
As Judge Dixon stated that, Bass Webb, standing before the bench, spat directly at her face. Spitting is classified as assault in many jurisdictions, and beyond the legal implications, it's an act of profound disrespect that strikes at the very core of judicial authority and dignity.
Charge.
Deputies immediately intervened, escorting Webb out of the courtroom without further escalation, but the damage was done. Judge Dixon was left stunned and humiliated by the act, though she composed herself quickly and continued with her duties. Bass Webb, the man who spat on Judge Dixon, had an extensive criminal history marked by violence against women and law enforcement. Prior to the 2009 incident, he had been linked to the murder of a woman named Sabrina Vaughn in Montgomery County. In the days leading up to his court appearance before Judge Dixon, Webb had allegedly murdered his girlfriend, Bria Runewich, strangling and raping her before attempting was reassigned to another judge to avoid any appearance of bias or conflict of interest. Her sentence was extended from 10 days to 120 days, and faced additional felonies subsequently found in her home. Webb's pattern of violent behavior continued even after his arrest. In February 2011, he spat on a jail guard named Roy Compston and was indicted for assault, leading to a 15-year sentence. He accumulated additional convictions over the years, including 50 years for Runewich's murder in 2015, life in prison for Vaughn's murder in 2017, and 37 years for the attempted murder of the jail employees in 2014. As of 2025, Bass Webb remains incarcerated at the Eastern Kentucky Correctional Complex, serving life with parole eligibility after 25 years, though his overlapping sentences make release highly unlikely. A 2023 appeal was denied, and there have been no updates suggesting that his status will change anytime soon. Webb's case is a stark reminder of the very real dangers that judges face from violent, repeat offenders who have nothing to lose and everything to gain from lashing out at the system. Judge Roland W. Barnes. On the morning of March 11, 2005, the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia, became the scene of one of the deadliest attacks on the U.S. judicial system in modern history. Judge Roland W. Barnes, a 64-year-old respected jurist known for his fairness and integrity, was presiding over a high-profile rape trial when his life was suddenly and violently cut short. The perpetrator, Brian Jean Nichols, a defendant in the case who was desperate to escape, overpowered a deputy, stole her gun, and went on a rampage that left 4 people dead, including Judge Barnes, and sent the city of Atlanta into a state of panic and lockdown. The attack began around 8:45 a.m. in a holding area of the courthouse, where Brian Nichols was being escorted by Deputy Cynthia Hall. Nichols, who was on trial for rape, false imprisonment, and related charges, had been found with makeshift weapons, shanks hidden in his shoes, just days earlier, yet security protocols had not been enhanced. Hall, a 51-year-old 5'5" officer, was alone with the 6'1", 210-pound Nichols, a situation that should subsequently found in her home. Webb's pattern of violent behavior after his arrest. In February 2011, spat on a jail guard named Roy Compston and was indicted, leading to a 15-year sentence. He accumulated additional convictions over the years, including 50 years for Runewich's murder in 2015, life in prison, Vaughn's murder, and security lapse. Entering the courtroom from behind the bench around 9 a.m., Nichols shot Judge Barnes once in the head at close range, killing him instantly. He then fatally shot court reporter Julianne Brandow, who was 46 years old and had served the court faithfully for over 20 years. Nichols assaulted Judge Barnes' secretary, Angela Robinson, and law clerk Beth Dipple, striking them with the gun but sparing their lives. He then exited the courtroom and encountered Deputy Sergeant Hoyt Teasley, a 43-year-old veteran with 28 years in law enforcement, on an exterior stairwell. Nichols shot and killed Teasley without hesitation, continuing his deadly escape from the courthouse. The building erupted into chaos as people fled, screamed, and tried to find safety, and a massive manhunt was launched involving over 100 officers and multiple agencies. Nichols fled the courthouse, carjacking multiple vehicles as he evaded capture throughout the day. Later that evening, in the upscale Buckhead neighborhood, he entered a home that was under construction and shot U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent David Wilhelm 3 times, killing the 40-year-old off-duty agent and stealing his gun, badge, and blue pickup truck. The manhunt finally ended around 9:50 a.m. the next day, when Nichols surrendered peacefully after taking a woman named Ashley Smith hostage at an apartment complex in Duluth. Smith, showing remarkable courage and faith, convinced Nichols to give himself up by reading to him from a book called The Purpose-Driven Life and talking to him about his actions and the consequences he would face. Her bravery undoubtedly saved lives and brought an end to one of the most terrifying 26 hours in Atlanta's history.
I think I was delusional. I think that drugs and alcohol played a part in those delusions.
Nichols' trial began in September 2008 on 54 counts, and after a 2-month proceeding, he was convicted on all counts in November 2008. The jury deadlocked 9-3 on the death penalty, which meant that instead of being executed, Nichols was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on December 13, 2008. As of 2025, he remains incarcerated. Security lapse. Entering the courtroom from behind the bench around 9, Nichols shot Judge Barnes once in the head at close range, killing him instantly. He then shot court reporter Leanne Brand, who was 46 years old and had served the court faithfully for 20 years. Nichols assaulted Judge Barnes' secretary. Cards showing on your screen for more videos. Don't forget to comment your thoughts below.